When you split the brain in half, what you can see is a perspective that looks like this. So right now we are looking into the left hemisphere of the cerebrum. Okay, and so we can see lots of different things. We'll start at the bottom. This here is the medulla oblongata. This is the pons, and D here represents the midbrain. Now the midbrain has a couple important structures to note. All the way to the posterior side here, we see a bump and then a second bump. The superior bump is the superior colliculus. The inferior bump is the inferior colliculus. Together, these two and the two colliculi on the other half of the brain are the corpora quadrigemina. This is the cerebellum, and when we cut the cerebellum in half, we can see that there is a almost tree-like structure called the arbor vitae. Okay, moving on up here, we can see this entire region right in the middle of the brain is collectively called the diencephalon. Going from back to front, this is the epithalamus. Specifically, this is the pineal gland or the pineal gland. This here represents part of the thalamus, and this represents the hypothalamus. Okay, so this is where the pituitary gland would be hanging off. Okay. This structure here is the corpus callosum attaching the left and right hemispheres of the brain. And I do want to point out that in a lot of these models, we can take the cerebrum off, or part of the cerebrum off, and actually get a better view of the thalamus. So what we can actually see here is only a little part of the thalamus. The rest of the thalamus is this right here. So this is the left half, and then there would be a right half on the other side. So let's walk through another model here. And this here again is looking at the left hemisphere of the brain. Medulla oblongata. Pons. From here to here, this is the midbrain, superior colliculus, inferior colliculus, making up half of the corpora quadrigemina. This is the cerebellum, and this branched structure here is the arbor vitae. The diencephalon includes number 54 here, the epithalamus, or specifically the pineal gland. This is the thalamus, or part of the thalamus, and this triangular part down here is the hypothalamus. And we can also see is the big Nike check mark here, the corpus callosum. Okay. On the other half of this same model, we can see not only the thalamus, hypothalamus, and epithalamus, but we can also see the other part of the thalamus over here. So very deeply embedded and covered with the cerebrum. Okay. Final view right here. You can turn this guy around once again. We can see the thalamus. There's always that little dot here. This is called the interthalamic adhesion. But then when we zoom in, we can see the rest of the thalamus. And one more model. Here is again a half of a brain. Okay, the medulla oblongata. The pons is always round, and the midbrain is from the pons up to the diencephalon. So just this right here. We can see the superior and inferior colliculi. Okay. This is the cerebellum, and the arbor vitae is very noticeable here. The diencephalon, hypothalamus, thalamus with that little dot, and the epithalamus here, which contains the pineal gland. All right, the thalamus connects to the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland we can see is hanging off via this little stalk. The stalk is called the infundibulum. And finally, the big Nike check mark is the corpus callosum.